Hello everyone, this is Wasim from Edureka and I welcome you all to this session in which I'm going to talk about classes and objects in Python. So let's take a look at the agenda for this session. Firstly, I will start the session with scopes and namespaces in Python, and then I will give a brief introduction to classes including declaration. Moving further, we will learn about objects in Python, and then we will discuss class and instance variables. Finally, I will discuss concepts like inheritance and private variables to sum up this session. I hope you are clear with the agenda. Also, if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to Edureka for more exciting tutorials and press the bell icon to get the latest updates on Edureka. And do check out Edureka's Python programming certification program. The link is given in the description box below. Now, without wasting any more time, let us begin with our session and talk about scopes and namespaces. So namespace in Python basically makes sure that any name that is used in a program are unique and can be used without any conflict. Namespaces are stored as dictionaries, which is absolutely unnoticeable, yet the namespaces are basically mapping names to objects. It is used so that attributes of an object also form a namespace. And the namespaces having the built-in names are created when the Python interpreter starts up, and these namespaces are never deleted. The global namespaces for a module are created when the module definition is read in and deleted when the interpreter quits. Similarly, local namespaces for a function is created when the function is called and is deleted when the function is executed. And coming on to the Python scope on the other hand can be defined as a region or a block where the namespace is directly accessible. And we have the innermost scope, which is basically the local scope, and then there is non-local and non-global scope mainly enclosed in function scope. And after this we have a global scope, and lastly we have the outermost scope, which basically has built-in names. So let's take a look at an example to understand scope and namespaces. So what we'll do is we'll define a few functions and we'll try to take a look at how namespaces and scopes work. So namespace is nothing but, we use a lot of names inside our program. There'll be names of methods, there'll be name of classes, or any name. For example, we are declaring variables, or we are using different modules or importing statements. So those are all names, and namespaces make sure that we are using them without any conflict. So that is one thing that we have to know about namespaces. And scope is basically, the region where we will be able to access them. So now to understand this, let's take a look at a program, guys. So we'll have one function. Let's say the function name is Edureka. So inside this function, we're going to have to implement or declare a few more functions. That is going to be a nested function, guys. So we'll have the definition of another function, which is going to be, let's say, local function, right? And inside this, I'm just going to take a name variable and give it some value. Let's say the value is Python. Then again, we have one more function, which is going to be non-local. So the whole point is to show you what all different type of scopes we have. So guys, there is a local scope, which is basically the local scope which we have. So we have a non-local and non-global scope, guys, mainly enclosed in a function scope. And after this, we have global scope. And lastly, we will have the outermost scope, which basically has built-in names. All right, guys. So this is non-local. So I'll have to use the non-local keyword here. After this, give it some value, let's say Python programming, and we'll have another function which is going to be, let's say, global, and we will use the global keyword here, and let's just say this is data science, and we'll have a name in general which is going to be the local scope, and this will be, let's say, Edureka. Now what we'll do is we'll call all these functions one by one to see what is happening here. All right, so first of all, we have name Edureka. So let's just call our function first of all. Let's see. All right, guys. So let's just print name. So we have this. Now if I call my function local function, let's see what happens. If our scope changes, no, nothing. right? It's still Edureka only. It is in the local scope. So if I call my function, which is non-local, and after this, if I print the name, it changes to Python programming, guys. And after that, let's just call the other function, which is non. All right. So we have already called non-local. Let's just call global function now. Right now, after this, if I print name, it is still Python programming. Now let's just all right, so we will print name here. So this is our global function, guys. So this is how the scope works, guys. I've shown you how we can work with local, non-local, and global function, which actually shows us how the scope works in Python. So now the next thing that I am going to show is how or what exactly is a class and how we declare a class in Python. Alright, guys, so it's easy. So a class can be seen as a bundle of functionalities, and since everything in Python is treated as an object, a class is also an object, and we can use various methods, functions, data types, etc. in a class and access them using the objects. So let us go ahead and take a look at how we can create a class in Python. So how exactly do we create a class in Python, guys? So it's pretty easy. You just write class, and there's a keyword that we have to use while declaring a class, and after that you just give your name, right? And there you can just give any statements that you want. So let's say this is a very simple class that I'm going to show you guys. So this is how you declare a class. All right, we can just put it inside a function. Now to access anything from my class, what I have to do is I have to make use of objects. Now what exactly are objects, guys? Objects are nothing but the instances that you create to access the attributes that you have inside your class, guys. As I told you, an object in Python is used to create references to the attributes of a class or to create the instances of a class. So whenever we are actually calling any method or any variable or any attribute from our class, we are actually creating an instance. So that is what object is all about. So how do you create an object, guys? So basically you just write anything. After that you create an instance. So this is how you create an instance. So now X is an instance of my class, guys. So what I'll do now here, I can use X to call any other member function or an attribute from my class. Alright, so if I call this, alright, this is a type error, guys. So let's just write self here. So this is how I can use objects to access values inside my class. So now coming on to the next part, which is the init function. When we create the instance of a class, it actually creates an empty object. So many classes actually create objects with instances that will have specific initial state. So a class defines a special init method. And when we define an init method, the init method will automatically be invoked when we create the instance of a class. We can even pass the arguments in the init function. Let's just try to understand this with an example. So let's just, okay, we'll take it from the beginning. So we'll have class Edureka. After that, we'll have init. We'll have the init function. Let's take a name as well, a variable. I'm passing an argument. All right. So self dot name is equal to name. All right. So this is my class. I have no errors. So now to call my attributes from this class, I'll create an instance. All right. Wait a second, guys. I'm missing one. All right. So I have to give one variable here. Let's say I'll give it as Python. So I have no errors, guys. So let's see if I can access anything using this. So as you can see, guys, this is quite easy. Or if I create a function now, let's say function, and after that I have print statement. This function is called. All right. So using X, let's see if I can call my function. All right. I forgot to mention. So this is how easily I can use objects, or this is how we use the init method to create instances. So next up what we have is what exactly are the instance objects. So instance objects are used for attribute references. So I'm just going to show you how we use them using an example, guys. So let's take it up from beginning to explain class instance objects. So I'll take one class, let's say Edureka again. After that, the init function. So I'm sure most of you are clear with this init method that we are using. It is basically a constructor that we use. So whenever we define the init method will automatically invoke when we create the instance of the class. Alright, so we can even pass the arguments in that. So that is one advantage that we have with init methods. And I'm just going to show you how we can create instance objects, guys. So let's say self.name is equal to name, or we'll give it some value, let's say, and self.course is equal to let's say data science. So we have one more function, let's say function. Inside this, let's say we have name is equal to Python programming. All right. So now when I create the object, so it is, let's say x is equal to Edureka. So I have no errors. This is my instance. Now instance object would be x.course is equal to, instead of data science, let's say I want to change it to something that I don't have right now, but I can change it. And when I call x.course, now I'll have the value as machine learning. So if I comment this part out, it is data science. So that is how we use the instance objects, guys. And now coming on to the next part that we have, which is method objects, guys. Now let me just tell you how we can use method objects. So inside this only, we have one method which is function. So we can store this value inside, let's say, all right, so we'll have a function is equal to x dot function. All right, so this is one method object I have created, and now using this I can just pass any values or call this function. To do that, I'll just have to do this. All right, so I'll have to print it, I guess. Wait a second, there's nothing going on here. So let's just print something. And now when I call my function, this is how I can access the values by using the method objects. So that is all about instance objects and method objects. Next up that I want to talk about is the class and instance variables. So what exactly are class and instance variables? Let us just understand this with an example. So class variable is nothing but the variable that we use to access the attributes. Now let us try to understand this with an example, guys. So we'll take one class, let's say Edureka, and now let me just define one class variable. Let's call it as name and give it a value, let's say Python. Now I'll have one function, let's say init function, and we'll have a few values here as well. Let's say course, and let's take one more value. Let's call it as tech, right? And yes. Now self dot name or self dot course is equal to course, and self dot tech is equal to tech. Now create an instance of a class. So this is going to be first instance. We'll call it as OB, or short for object. Now when I call Edureka, I'll have to pass some values, right? So the course name would be Python programming, and the tech is let's say Python, right? So I can call using OB course name and tech. All right, so if I call name, wait a second, guys, I think I made a mistake here. All right, so this is actually, I'm calling the class variable here. Now let's say for each instance I'm going to have different values, guys. So if I call ob.course, okay, we have one error, Python programming, And if I call ob.tech, we're gonna have the value Python. Now to have more instance variables, I'm gonna have to create more instances, guys. So for these values to be different, I'm gonna have to make another instance, guys. So to do that, I'll have ob1 is equal to Edureka. Let's say now this time I'm gonna have to do it as, I'll just take it as Selenium. And this one I'm gonna have, let's say, all right, so let's call it as data science. And this we'll call R programming. And now using OB1, I can access name tag and course. So when I call name over here, so I'll just remove all this for once, or just this. All right. When I call ob1.name, still I'm getting Python, guys, because this is a class variable. It's going to be same for each instance. And when I call ob1.course, the value is going to change to data science, because for each instance that we create, instance variable is going to be different. All right. Or we can call it as for each instance variable, we're going to have a different instance. And after that, let's just call ob1.tech as well. So that'll be different as well. So I hope you understand what exactly are class and instance variables, guys. So now next up, I want to talk about inheritance in Python, guys, because inheritance is a very important part when it comes to class and objects, and it's basically prerequisite that you have to learn about while learning about classes and objects. So I'll just quickly tell you what it actually is. So the method of inheriting the properties of a parent class into a child class is known as inheritance. It is an object-oriented programming concept, and since Python is an object-oriented programming language, it is actually quite important. I'll tell you a few benefits of inheritance as well. First one is code reusability. We do not have to write the same code again and again. We can just inherit the properties we need in a child class. And after that, it represents a real world entity or a real world relationship between parent class and the child class. And it is actually transitive in nature. So if a child class inherits properties from a parent, then all other subclasses of the child class will also inherit the properties of the parent class. So these are the advantages of inheritance. Now let's just take a look at a few examples. I'll show you what exactly inheritance is and a few types of inheritance as well. So we'll start with simple inheritance, where we'll have two classes, a class parent, and let's say we'll have some values. Here we'll have function 1. All right. So we have created both the parent and the child class. So we have child class here where we have to pass parent as like this. So that is kind of what you have to do while doing the inheritance. Now the fun part is when we create an instance for a child class, guys. So let's just create an instance for a child class. All right. So now is the part where you'll see how we are actually inheriting the properties from the parent, because using the child class, I'm able to call the function 1 as well. So this is the example of simple inheritance, guys. So this is how we do simple inheritance, guys. Next up I want to show is that is multiple inheritance. So multiple inheritance is nothing but you're going to use two different base classes inside one child class. That is going to be multiple inheritance. So I'll just quickly show you how you do multiple inheritance in Python as well. All right, so you'll have class parent first of all. So this is going to be your parent 1. Now let's just define a function and we'll just print 1 here, and after that let's just take one more class that is going to be the parent 2. All right, here we'll just print 2, and now comes the fun part, guys. We'll have the child class here. So inside this we will pass parent 1. All right, so this is going to be parent 1, and parent 2, and after this let's just create one more function, and let's just call it function number 3, and after this we'll just print 3, guys. Now when I create the instance of my child class, alright, so I can actually call all 3 functions, guys. So we'll call function 2. Alright, so child attribute does not have any function 2. Alright guys, I think I know what I made the mistake about. So this, I actually was using a caps letter here, but this was a lowercase letter here, so that's why we were getting the error. So first of all, we are getting the instance to get the child class function. Now we'll use it to get the parent class functions and function 1 as well. Right, so there's no function 1, I guess. Yes. So this is a simple example of multiple inheritance that we can have in Python, guys. And after that, we can have multi-level inheritance as well. So there, what we can do is, instead of doing this, I can just pass parent 1 here. Now what changes here is I can actually call all these functions using the instance of child class, or I can create the instance of parent 2, but I'll not be able to call the function number 3 over here because it's the instance of the child class. So if we do the multi-level inheritance, we can actually restrict the access. But there's one more way to do that. That is private variables. That I'm just going to tell you how we can work with private variables. Now to understand the private variables, I'm just going to tell you a few things about it. Private variables do not exactly exist in Python, but we can achieve it using the name mangling technique, in which we have a naming convention basically, in which we use underscores and double underscores to declare methods and attributes. So let us just try to understand it with an example, guys. So I'm just going to show you how we make the variables private in Python. And if you have any questions or if you have any queries, guys, I have taken the reference for all of whatever I've taught in this session from the official documentation of Python. So you can just check it out, classes over there, and you can understand it better using the examples. So I have taken the reference from the official documentation. So if you are looking for more information about classes and objects, you can just look it up there. Also, there are a few things that you might want to learn after you complete classes and objects. That's going to be generators and iterators in Python, guys. So guys, we have a tutorial on generators in Python. You can just check it out. And we have made one tutorial for iterators as well. All right, so now we'll get back to the private variables. What exactly are we going to do here is we'll declare a class first of all. Let's just call it as Edureka. Now we'll have init function. We'll have self, name, and let's say course. All right, so now self, name, I'm using a single underscore is name, and self course is equal to course. So I'll just show you how it is actually important here, what I have done. All right, so we'll just print self name. All right, and self dot course. Seems quite easy, right? Like we will be able to do this. And let's just create an instance of the class Edureka. Yes. Right, we have an invalid syntax. Okay, let's give it as Python programming. I will call it as Python programming here. And data science here. Right, so let's just try to call the show function. We're getting data science and Python programming. So using the name mangling technique, I'm able to access these variables that I've declared over here. So if I remove this, let's see what happens. We're getting an attribute error which says Edureka object has no attribute name, but we do. And if I remove this as well, or just have this, it will show me like data science is equal to Python programming. Right, I forgot to, yes. So we're getting attribute error again, which says Edureka object has no attribute course. But we do have an attribute called course. We are not able to access this because we have used the naming convention. So as long as I've not used the double underscore, I'm not going to be able to access it. So that is how name mangling works. I'll show you one more example, guys. So this is simple, guys. I was just trying to access this method over here. So let's see if I can actually access anything else. I cannot because I'm not even getting any values for it. So I'm not able to access name. I'm not able to access course. So how do I do that? To do that, I'll write Edureka course. So that is how I get Python programming, right? And to get the name, I'll have to write it like this. All right, I'm getting an error, guys. Or I'll just, I think I'll be able to access it using this. Yes. So we'll put it in a print statement so that both of these statements are getting there. All right. So to access these values, I had to use the underscore over here for name. For a single underscore, you can just access it using the single underscore in the instance or when you're calling the attribute. And to call the attribute with a double underscore, you will have to write it somewhat like this. So if I just try it using like this, will I be able to access it? No, we will get an attribute error which says Edureka object has no attribute course. But Edureka actually has an attribute called Edureka course. So that is how we use name mangling to access private variables in Python. So that is all about this session, guys. If you have any questions, you can mention them in the comment section below. Also, if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to Edureka for more exciting tutorials and press the bell icon to get the latest updates on Edureka. And do check out Edureka's Python programming certification program. The link is given in the description box below. Thank you and have a nice day.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!